Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program.
Before we begin, I'd like to mention our sponsor for this week's dose, Jordan Salvet and Salvet Advisors. If you're not aware of Jordan and his team, they've helped build some amazing subscription programs like Midday Squares, Hunt a Killer, and Pipsticks. And their team is working on a new tool that's going to allow you to plug into your subscription program and start getting insights right away. It's going to be coming out later this summer. Going to have a big announcement around it, and I'm going to have some exclusive offers for everybody that's on my newsletter and my podcast for my community. But if you're interested in getting added to that wait list, you can email subdoc@salvet.com. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. But again, want to give a big shout out to Jordan for everything that he's done for me, this podcast, and for the subscription community. Welcome to another dose of Subscription Prescription, the podcast where we try to help you figure out all things related to e-commerce subscriptions. And on this week's dose, I'm going to be doing a little bit of trying to keep things a little bit simple, focus for you and your team. And a lot of the conversations that I have with e-commerce brands, whether they be founders, whether they're head of growth or over retention, there's always a common theme in every single one of them, which is there's just so much going on. I'd like to work on this. I'd like to figure this out, but I'm just not sure that's what we're going to prioritize right now. So if this sounds familiar to you, this episode is dedicated to making things just a little bit simpler and a little bit easier for you, because I do understand that subscriptions do require a bit of focus, allocation of resources. There's going to be a bunch of to-do lists of things trying to figure out and build and all this stuff. So if it's not that time for you and your company yet, that's okay. There are a few things I want you to do and to be ready for so that when you can do those things. So, and this again comes down to the fundamental advice I give to every brand when we're talking subscriptions. And so just taking a quick moment, let's unpack pretty quickly what it takes to grow subscription right? So that it can scale effectively. The first thing is a product or products, right? So you need to be building products that people want to buy that are high quality, or some other type of version where they're a faster delivery system, or there's something different or special or unique about it, right? We're trying to create quality product. That's the first piece. The second piece is we want to be gathering information. So I'm not even getting into like all the fine tuning of how you put your offer on the page or anything like that. I have tons of past doses about that, and there will be more to come in the future. This instead isn't necessarily so much about trying to figure out how you're going to sell subscriptions, but rather the components that you need to make sure you have in place so that when you do go to do them, you can get feedback. So the next point of this is, in addition to having your product, is you want to be doing some kind of information gathering, right? And this can be done at several different stages. Some of the first ones I like to recommend is using some kind of information quiz, or when you're doing a pop-up and you're asking for somebody's email, either be using like Form Toro or Alia Learning, where you're asking for some more information, some first-party data in exchange for that discount, or as part of that quiz. You're trying to gather more information about the types of users that are coming to your site. And this is beneficial for one-time or subscriptions. So this isn't necessarily a subscription-only play. This is just something you need more data, right? So like when an analyst like me or consultant like me comes in, it's one of the first things I look at is tell me more about your customers. So, and then the next stage of this kind of like learning and information gathering comes down to post-purchase surveys. Now, most of you are doing these. But again, most brands that I talk to are doing just some basic variation of attribution surveys, meaning how did you first hear about us? How long have you known about our brand? Things like that. I want you to start asking a few more questions related to what was exciting or interesting about this purchase, like related to price, the discount, there's a bundle or something else that's special about how you're making that available. Maybe it was a Memorial Day special or something like that. But then also questions related to use case, like how are you using this product? What's your intended use for this product? The simplest example I can think of is if you're selling protein powder. Are you training for an endurance race? Are you weightlifting? Is this meal supplement? Like trying to get into some of these use cases, right? Because again, these are some of the first things that I ask as a consultant when I come into a brand is tell me more about your buyer. Why are they buying? And what are they using it for? So that's really kind of like the basic stuff right there. The last pieces of this is going to be looking at cancellation flows. So regardless of the platform you're using, I do believe that all of them are offering this now, at least all the ones that I run into to some varying degree. You want to ask questions related to cancellation surveys. And I will say one thing I do harp on a little bit. You can take 5 minutes, go into your subscription app, look at your cancellation surveys, and just look at, say, most brands I look at have like 10, okay? And out of those 10, 2 or 3 are getting literally 0 or like 1 or 2% of all responses. Axe those. Make the option simpler, keep other on there. And then if you see some like really basic standard reasons, but maybe you know more about your brand now that you've been running it for a while, on the subscription side, you could maybe put in 1 or 2 questions that are a little more pertinent to your brand. So like with that protein powder, if you know that a lot of times people, forget, so they've stopped working out or they didn't like the taste, things like that would be more relevant. Okay, so those are just the basic pieces I want you to think about. You're building a product, you're trying to build your marketing machine and all those other pieces. You want to be gathering information, right? You want to be gathering information around the types of people that are coming to your site, the reasons that they're buying their products from you, and then cancellation flows on reasons, especially those other reasons on things that people are not unhappy about. Those are like the basic building blocks that I, as a consultant, immediately ask for when I come in, when I'm looking at the whole purchase experience, because what I do with that is I start to uncover where there's a gap in alignment. Maybe like, again, say you're having a higher percentage of endurance athletes that are checking out with your product than weight loss, which is kind of how you intended your product to be sold. So maybe we can shift an offer for endurance athletes that's going to be more compelling. That drives up conversions. That has better retention, right? So those are some of the things that I just immediately start looking for immediate wins. Now, so that all being said, that's just a couple things to focus on. Product, information gathering on the site, information gathering as part of the cancellation process. You can also, when you regularly survey your customers through email and other methods, ask them questions related to that. Another good little caveat to throw in there would be asking some people that are one-time purchasers what it would take to get them to subscribe, as an example. But I want to segue from that whole thing of basic, like, here's the fundamentals, here's the things you should at least need to have in place so that when it comes time to focus on subscriptions, you're ready. The next thing I want to do is lead you in a bit of a brainstorm exercise. So if you are thinking about how you can get better at subscriptions, and without necessarily pivoting the entire team and all your resources to this is something also that I do as part of my consulting, and something that I lead a lot of brands with. And honestly, this type of discussion like uncovers like really big things. Like a brand here in Utah, we did this over the course of an hour. They had 20,000 subscribers. And just this brainstorming activity resulted in a 40% reduction in month-over-month churn. Okay. So it's significant. What I want you to start thinking about is start asking questions related to your brand, your product, your subscribers. So a lot of the things I like to ask initially when I'm talking to founders and their teams is trying to explain to me this purchase process, this purchase experience. And this is what I want you to kind of walk your team with. You're all so close to it all the time, but everybody's still carrying these assumptions around why people buy. But you know your brand and your customers better than anybody does, right? Even as an outside consultant, all I can do is just point out some dots that maybe you haven't connected. And that's what I hope to try to walk you through here right now. So sit down with your team, get a whiteboard, and start walking through some of the basic stuff. I want you to start listing out, what are the reasons why people buy from us? What are the reasons that bring them in? What are the reasons they find the product compelling? Write out as much as you can around what people like or dislike or find compelling about your product, your brand. Okay? That's step 1. Next question is why do you think people are subscribing to your product? Instead of just one-time purchasers, what makes a subscriber a little bit different? Is it any of those use cases? Is it something related to their income, type of who they are? What more do you know about those subscribers and those questions, and why they're making the choice to subscribe to your product instead of just going with one time? Now, the next thing I want you to ask is what happens when somebody subscribes to your product? Are they getting emails? What happens when they unbox the product? What are they initially thinking and feeling? What does initial adoption look like? You've talked to tons of your customers, right? What are they thinking, seeing, experiencing when they first open that box? Is it a device that takes them a while to get used to? Is it a supplement they have to be mixing into like with water or milk? Like what are people going through? What do you know about that initial onboarding experience, that welcoming experience, right? What do you know about that? The final piece of this brainstorming, like things you're going to be thinking about with your team, is why do people cancel? Okay, combined with why do people stick around? So what is it about the product that people either don't like or they aren't getting that you know of that are problems? A really common one is price. A really common one is maybe it's kind of a little confusing for people or something like that. Might be they end up having too much product. But if that's your answer, the reason I'm doing this brainstorming is I want you to get into the why of why people have too much product. Or people have too much product because they don't understand it. It was new to them. These are the types of questions you're going to be thinking about in this brainstorming session. And then the other part of this, why people cancel, is why do people stick around? Tell me more about the people that love your product, your fanatics. These are the people that are referring your product all the time. They're your most loyal customers. What do you know or understand more about them? Okay. I want you to put that all up on a whiteboard, put it in a Google Doc, whatever you need to do to organize all those thoughts with your team. This is just a really great exercise to start getting feedback and getting some awareness over what is happening within the subscription program. What you're going to do with this is you're going to start looking at that, take a step back and thinking, okay, where are some places we can bridge some of these gaps that we're starting to notice? What is different between the type of initial subscriber and the type of subscriber that sticks around for years? What's the gap between that? What can you maybe do there? So when we do that brainstorming, that's when things start to pop out around opportunities or problems. And so again, the whole point of this episode, the whole point of this dose is to not give you a million things to do. I want you to just focus on information gathering, quizzes, post-purchase, cancellation. Focus on building a good product. And when you have time, or make some time to brainstorm with your team through all of these different types of reasons, who people are, why they buy, why they subscribe, what are they experiencing, why are they canceling, and what makes some people stick around longer than others. What is different about them? Just do that. Because out of that, you're going to start to get some really important insights on things that you can do better. And don't be afraid to fail on some of these experiments. I have to tell you that sometimes when the number one reason that people churn is price, sometimes the answer is actually raising the price. Within subscriptions, there are often counterintuitive things that work better than what we're thinking. So if you do that brainstorming session and you start looking at some things that are just kind of jumping out at you and you want some help, feel free to hit me up. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can drop comments on this episode. I'd be happy to give you some feedback or even run one of these brainstorming sessions with your team. But those are some of the pieces and some of the things that I do with my clients, with brands that I'm just meet on the street, so to speak, or at conferences and things, trying to help and guide them through this process that often feels overwhelming that we call subscriptions. Okay, that's it for this week's dose. I hope you found some of this valuable. Please like, comment, subscribe. And again, if you have any questions or want any help trying to understand better what's going on with your subscriptions, please feel free to reach out. I've got my website and links to some of my socials in the show notes. And I'll see you next week.
That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.